How did you come up with that desire to not have your face seen?
The success that I had in Pittsburgh was very interesting. It was the closest thing to being a celebrity that you could be, because there was no celebrities in this city. You had the Steelers.
Yep.
That was it. You have this young dude making moves. I'm from another place. At that time, New York was it. I remember I used to go down to the fish market like 2 or 3 times a week downtown and eat dinner. And the waiters and waitresses used to be like, yo, what the do you do? This is the place people come for like holidays and birthdays. There ain't no entrepreneurs in the city. It was to the point near the end. Everywhere I went, never paid for no drink. Go to a restaurant, people caught my food. Orders come out, say hello, and it was interesting. So when I went to Miami, I remember my saying was, "Fuck the fame, give me the money." And that was the approach. So I was just like, I'm gonna do this a little bit different. That was when MySpace started taking over. And like, I actually witnessed people starting to change over pictures and all this other stuff. Like I got it before then, because even with the magazine we had, one of the reasons why it was successful is we used to go around to the clubs with the digital camera and take pictures of everyone. And then people would get the magazine just to see if their little picture was in the thing. And that was a big deal to them. Like they felt like somebody because their picture was in it. That's when the whole C&B scene thing even became a saying for nightclubs. And as much as that was like the gold rush, tons of money that was made, like it was also kind of disgusting. You know what I mean?
There was that scene at Studio 54. There was that Andy Warhol moment. Everybody wanted to be seen by Grace Jones and feel like they were in a place where this person that everyone knew who they were was also present.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of weird though? Think about it, right? You put these celebrities on flyers. Oh, so-and-so is going to be there. So then it's like, all right, so you went to the club and you were not even near this person. You didn't have a conversation with them. Even if you did, you're in a loud club. It's not a real conversation. But then what happens? You go home and it's like this like social currency that you have, which goes into the whole thing of like celebrity culture. And honestly, it's very silly in a lot of ways.
There's this internet persona, Doorman of New York. He posted, "I don't take pictures with celebrities. I work with celebrities every day, and for me, it's just corny because I don't actually know them. They're not part of my family. They're not part of my circle.
Right.
It's almost this facade of having had a moment with someone."
I see it all the time with promoters. Like their whole thing is posting that. You know, it's like pathetic. There's a dude from here. I won't even say who he is, but like this dude was at some festival and he texted me the one time and he's like, "Yo, Kenny Dope is here. Could you do me a favor? Could you text him so I get a picture with him?" And I'm like, "No." Like, I don't even understand that. Like, you just want to run up to someone, take a picture, and then it just shows that you are cool with them. Like, it's corny to me. But again, even to go into myself, and this comes with getting older, there was a point that I thought I was the shit because I was doing flyers with all the celebrities on it. I didn't know the celebrities. Could I go to the party? Sure, but if I did, went up to them when I did the flyer, they don't give a fuck. But yet, in the hierarchy of the game, that put me at a higher position of the dude who's doing Taco Tuesday flyer, for example. You know what I mean? That's the fascinating thing about now. I've been invited into this level and accepted because of creativity and like I'm on their level like that, where now I look back at the time of me just kind of being associated with celebrities for this other reason as kind of corny.
You had the talent, obviously. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the design, but also you have this ability to act cool around people. People want to work with people that they like. And so is that from growing up in New York? Is that something you always had?
I think New York swagger is a thing. We have a thing about us. Like, if you ever saw the movie Paid in Full, you know what I mean? Like, the characters in that, like, they had that thing. They walked in and was like, yo, so-and-so's here. I chased that for sure. Once you get it, though, and more importantly than getting it, because you can get it at moments, but maintaining it, I don't really care about that as much anymore. There's no doubt that I have it just because of the resume and the longevity and more importantly, the work. I'm doing the best work I've ever done in my life at the highest level now. It's not about what I did 10 years ago or this or that. Like a lot of people hold on to accomplishments from before and I don't give a fuck about what anyone did before. What are you doing now?
What I've read about the work and what I've seen for myself is that it is its own style. It was a style that maybe had some Miami design elements, like that kind of Art Deco, but with a hip hop edge? Or how do you describe your style?
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like I sit down every single time with a blank canvas. I look at the elements of whatever is involved and just start putting it together. But I would say design-wise, it's heavily based on, there was a style in Miami at the time for flyers where this is when stock photography websites became readily available. So like when I first started doing flyer designs, like you went out and got one picture, put that together with the text, and that's what you did. But then when the stock websites became available where you could be like, all right, I want a laptop, I want a microphone, I need this chair. And you could very easily download those elements and collage them together into something. Like that became a collage Miami style, I think, that I kind of stuck to, that you piece a bunch of shit together. And like, I'm very much about layering a bunch of stuff together where there's elements in there that are going over most people's heads. But, you know, if you catch them, then you're just like, what the fuck?
That little Dr. Gold you put on the record on my flyer.
I mean, did you notice that the B-tips is a postage stamp?
Oh, that was so dope because of the send off. Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Like those are the type of like levels with the design that when you find out and figure it out, then you're just like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like that's that B-boy shit though, because it's like, you know, when I was a B-boy, it was like one of those things where you think you're breaking, and then when I go in a circle, you want to go home. That's the goal. And there's no offense towards anybody. I like when somebody does that to me, because that makes me be like, all right, time to work harder.
It's interesting to hear about design in that hip hop context of let's see what you can do. I think a lot of people forget now that that's where hip hop came from, that hip hop has
100%.
always been about show and prove, about battling. It came from the Jamaica sound system culture. Who had the loudest speakers in the park? If you didn't have them, you packed your shit up.
Yeah, like, yo, you ain't it. You know what I'm saying? Like, no offense, and that's a part of it, but, you know, some of that gets taken away with today's culture of, like, participation. Everyone gets a trophy. Everyone don't get a trophy with me. Like, I'm known for being a bit of an asshole. Like, you don't want to ask my opinion on stuff because I'm going to tell you the truth. And I might hurt feelings, but I'm going to tell you what I think it is. Like, I think that there is a such thing as better.
Isn't that why the clubs and companies are calling you for help? Because they know that not only you have an aesthetic talent that's been proven over decades with a hip hop nuance, but also you're unafraid of A, failure, and B, rejection, and you're gonna tell it like it is.
I hope so. I like to think so. I don't know. People call me for a variety of reasons, and a lot of times they just want to be down with this thing that they're hearing about. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just like, oh, like this one dude I just did something for recently. He's just like, everyone I talked to said you're the best. Like, and he's like want to big me up. Every time we started talking, I was just like, just stop with the compliments, man. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? And we got the thing done. And that's another weird aspect to it. But admittedly, that was the goal at one point. Like, I remember my whole thing with flyers, when I decided I was going to like go hard with the flyer game, was like, I want people that are promoters or club owners to think about having their flyer done by Moe Knows Best the same way you would think about having a beat made by Kanye West. You don't want Kanye West's intern making the beat. You want Kanye making the beat. And then when Kanye made your beat, are you not going to promote that Kanye made your beat? So like my goal was to have it be a thing where like it's just that one other thing that plays into people's egos and be like, oh shit, Moe Knows Best did my flyer. That was the psychology of it.
Wasn't that also something you got away from though in Miami, where you actually had some people, freelancers working underneath you?
The thing about it is, in this business, there's constantly this thing where like, and I still get this to this day. Everyone's like, so when are you gonna open up like a firm and have like a bunch of people working with you? And I go, cool. So you want Kanye West's intern making the beat for you? Like, you know what I'm saying? And they go, no, not for me, but for everybody else. Oh, okay, for everyone else. At the time, volume was very high. Even to this day, a lot of people call me, and I turned down a bunch of stuff. It was one of those things where I let it get to me of being like, all right, well, if I start this other thing, and it's a cheaper version of what I do, I could just suck up more of that business. And that was what that goal was. I ran it for a little while, but it was one of those things where it's just like, it was so much of a headache of running a cheaper service and dealing with designers who were not as good as I was. It just made more sense for me to charge a little bit more and only offer me. And now that's what it is. Like, people constantly are like, man, you should get some other people working for you. Do you want them doing your stuff? Nobody does. They want me doing it. So I'm not for everybody. And even DJs who I'm cool with, big DJs, have been like, oh man, you should get someone else. And I'm like, if I book Terry Hunter, I want Terry Hunter. And if Terry Hunter's not available, okay, I gotta choose somebody else. That's what it is. But the problem right now is, in this game, there's nobody else that's really doing what I do. It's a good place to be, but it's also kind of, Again, we're innovating, especially this after COVID thing. Like what happened after COVID and the way things are going now, like there's no other person that is a single one-man show handling as many different components for somebody's marketing effectively, doing it well, and doing it fast in the way that I'm doing it right now.
At one point in Pittsburgh, you were also printing them yourself. You had
That's
the
how
spot
that's
on
how it started.
Penn Ave, right?
Yeah, that's how it started.
First,
So,
you were getting them printed in Ohio.
yeah, so no, the way it worked was when I first started, this is early on in the game, I wanted to get colored flyers for my own parties, and I dealt with a dude from here. He was out in like Carnegie named Mark the Printer, and he was printing for all the rave people. Like the rave promoters were all getting the nice colorful flyers, and I was
Irish
like,
Center.
yeah, that type of stuff, exactly. He was the guy. And I always went to the raves. I was cool with all of them, so they put me down with the guy who did it. So I started printing, and I'll never forget, it was $350 for a box of 5,000 quarter-page flyers, right? So, of course, the hip-hop kids started being like, yo, I want to get them for me. And I'd be like, cool, it's $400 for a box of 5,000 quarter-page flyers. And I was making my little $50. Now, being an innovator, you know, like I was constantly going to Cleveland and shit to B-Boy, and I came across a company out there called Hot Cards that was doing that same exact box of 5,000 quarter-page flyers and selling them for $160. Now, in my mind, I'm going 160. My profit margin now just became very high. So now I started piecing off 1 or 2 boxes a week. You know what I mean? Now we're talking 300-400 profit. And what they were doing at the time, which is crazy, is we used to ship them on the Greyhound bus. Because you could ship anything on the Greyhound bus for $20 from Cleveland to Pittsburgh. So it's once or twice a week, we go to the Greyhound and pick up the boxes from underneath the bus, and I was doing 1 or 2. Then next thing you know, I'm up to 4 or 5. Then it got to the point that I was like doing 6 or 7 boxes. Now I'm spending $100 and what to ship these things? Like I could probably just send someone up there for $100 to Cleveland. It's 2 hours. So then we started driving back and forth to Cleveland, or I pay someone $100 or whatever, and then it just started going. And you know, by the time they came to me and they got to me and they were like, we want to give you a franchise of the company. This is actually a big business thing for me, is they were like, we want to give you a franchise. And I was like, all right. And they were like, you're going to sell the boxes for $160. I was like, okay, what's my profit margin? They're like about $35. And I was like, I'm selling them right now, making 150 plus a box. Like, why would I want to sell them and make 35? That doesn't make any sense. And the guy's like, well, you design, right? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. He's just like, you're going to be able to do more designs and keep that money for yourself. And at the time, design, standard across everything, $100 a design. That's what I was getting back then. So I'm like, all right. So then I started looking, all right, a couple of these. Still, numbers didn't work out. And I came to him real. I was like, listen, I don't really see why I would do this. He's like, listen, there's one other person in Cleveland or Pittsburgh that's been using us, because people slowly started finding out about this company, started using them. And there was this chick named Candace, who I didn't like Candace at all. We all did the same shit. And the guy actually said to me, like, well, listen, you know, if you don't want it, I'm just going to offer it to somebody else. And then, like, they're going to be the person selling them for 160. And no one's going to buy boxes from you for 350, 400 because someone's selling them for 160. And he brought up Candace's name. I hated Candace so much that that's why I accepted the franchise. Yeah.
You just didn't want her to
Yeah,
have
I
it.
just didn't want her to get it. I couldn't stand Candace. So yeah, so that was that. But in his defense, he used to call it the Walmart theory. Like, we're just gonna sell shit so cheap that you're gonna suck up all the business. And I went from doing 7 to 10 boxes a week to doing 50 boxes a week. Yeah. So, and I did that for years.
These were parties in Pittsburgh.
Oh, listen, I had Clear Channel, I had the Cultural Trust. I was printing for everyone in Pittsburgh. Like, this wasn't just parties at this point, because I expanded. I went after everybody. Like, I was just like, how are we going to print as much stuff as possible? And that's also when I started Access Magazine. You probably don't even know about that, do you?
I think it was maybe, this is is hip hop related with Masai or no?
No. So Masai used to have a space in my office.
Yeah.
So he had a desk in my office. So
Yeah.
me and Masai, we're really close. We did a bunch of shit together.
Yeah.
Love him. That's my man, 100%. So he was in there, but like one of the things, I used to have like 5 different things going on. But one of the things was Access Magazine. And the reason for that was one of the things that one of the services I offered were club promotion. And if we were promoting for Tom Jason's club over here, they wouldn't let us in another club to promote Tom Jason's stuff. But I was printing everyone's flyers. So I was like, how can we pass out everyone's flyers at one time? So then I came up with the idea of like, I'm just gonna make a quarter-page booklet and I'll put everybody's flyers in there. And then we could pass out everyone's books at one time. So I got on the phone, and I'll never forget this, I called clients, and in about 45 minutes, I sold ads at $200 a pop before I even had a magazine or anything. And for me to then take the flyer I already printed and just put it in this booklet and pass out 5,000 of those. So then that's how Access Magazine started. And Access Magazine, I was in publication for that. I then started hiring writers, we wrote articles, and we did that for a year and a half.
The journalism piece is interesting, and it matches that write-up that I read. I know, I understand it's kind of like secret, but the writing is incredible. That was also somebody who worked with you on Access?
No, that wasn't someone on Access. That was somebody after. But yeah, I always, again, school was never my thing. Writing was never my thing. But I know that's one of my faults. So what I did was I always went out and found good writers.
Yes.
People that knew what the fuck they were doing to handle that. And coincidentally, over time, now I've learned and tried to educate myself in that area. And coincidentally, now you don't need to because of AI makes it nice and easy. But when I see people that write they're doing business and they write stuff, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's such like a telltale of I don't discount people because of that, but I'm still like, man, everything today is the written word, and through posts and all this other shit, bad grammar and all that other stuff is that's just a no. But I learned from hiring good writers.
I think it allows us to pivot back to the very beginning, because you come from 50-50 intellectual excellence on your mom's side, ultimate achievement in medicine, in research, and then on your dad's side from the music and the arts. So you have this kind of marriage of intellectual pursuit and artistic pursuit, which
if you look at the two of them together, it makes perfect sense.
Pushed you into the world.
Yeah. It's crazy. DNA and genetics is a crazy thing.
And the environment, I think both are significant, but we probably don't recognize the genetic piece nearly as much as we need to. Although I would say in research, we're putting way too much money into genetics. So for example, Parkinson's dollars, we're probably spending 9 out of every $10 on Parkinson's research on genetics. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think so. And then if you look at the disease itself, only 10% of the disease is genetically linked. So it's 90% environmental.
Sure.
And anyway, so this is Long Island. Mom was a geneticist?
So my mom was a biology teacher. My mother she got the second highest score in all of New York State on the SATs. Had offers to go everywhere. You know what I mean? Go private, everything very early on. And she decided she loved music and she'd go out, and she ended up having a kid by some black musician and threw everything off.
Wow.
Yeah.
But she ended up at Northwestern and was a physician,
that was way later. So the childhood early on, a lot of stuff went on, but also teaching classes throughout it all at Stony Brook University. And then after her third time with rehab, she finally cleaned up, and that's when she came to Pittsburgh. Went there for genetic counseling, and then got hired and went to go work, and she was the director of a program for Northwestern University for their genetics division. You know what I mean? Craziness. So for the last 10 years of her life, essentially, was at the top level. She wrote shit. She worked for the CDC, whole bunch of stuff, even leading to COVID and shit that was going on that I know from inside shit is insane.
I don't know if we'll have time to get into those stories on this episode.
Yeah. But so anyway, so she
met your dad, who was a drummer?
No, my dad's a saxophone player.
That's right. And he played on recordings with Bob Marley?
He would play with their band, So he was a musician. At that time, bands were the shit. So my dad actually in Miami had a pretty well-known band down there, and he had record deals and all that shit. He was big time. But he had most notably played with Bob Marley. We had a house in New York where basically all the musicians all lived together at the time. But Al Anderson, who was Bob Marley's guitarist, he actually lived with us. So the running joke from my mom was that I was essentially born backstage. I'll never forget, there was one time I was at something, and somebody backstage came up to me and was just like, man, you just look like you belong here. And I just remember thinking I've been in this shit for so long, you just don't even know, so yeah.
Your childhood was growing up on Long Island, going into the city. How did you find hip hop?
I think hip hop finds you. But so we ended up moving to Smithtown, That was one of the only black kids in the whole entire school. I'm half black, half white. The Irish side is like local one union elevator working Irish. And that's who we went to go live with my grandfather. So I was there. When I was in high school, maybe junior high school, something like that, somewhere around there, I remember it was me and my boy Corey, and it was during gym class, and we had to walk around the track. And some way, somehow, we ended up like walking around the track and freestyling with each other. But before then, I was always like doing graffiti in my own book and stuff like that. But that was like my first real memory of it, where we would just rap going around during gym class. And that's how we became cool. And at that time, being a hip hop kid in a place where it was like mainly like jocks and preppy boys and that type of stuff, like it was not cool. So we were definitely outsiders to some degree, but then hip hop just slowly but surely just started taking over. And, you know, we were the people who were first doing it. So.
What years were these, and what were the first memories from like the hip hop world?
I graduated high school in 1996, so this had to be 1991, 92, like around that time. Yeah, I just remember you'd hear it on the radio, so that was a big thing. It was like 8th grade. 8th grade, I remember specifically just watching TV, and that's when I first got into dancing and like doing all the New Jack dancing, Running Man, Roger Rabbit, all that type of stuff. Yeah, and then I remember that all of a sudden became uncool, and nobody was on that.
Well, LL Cool J kind of ended it, right?
My memory of it was like, it was more the NWA type stuff. Like once all that hardcore stuff came in, it was just like not cool anymore. Like literally everybody I knew, including myself, was selling drugs 6 months later. You know, like we were all hustling. But I do remember like the way I got into
which was apparently a government front. Like apparently Ice Cube has come out and said,
100%.
Look, like they told me to rap about selling drugs.
Listen,
none of us were actually into it. Only Easy was a drug dealer. All the rest of us were like artists.
Yeah, I've said this multiple times. That thing that he said is true. And from my memory of that time, like I remember it. Like, you know, watching culture shift and being around long enough to watch it, like you could shift the culture. And at that point in time, like everything was brand Nubian, Heavy D, people dancing, Queen Latifah having a good time. And they systematically were like, no more of this. And it just stopped. And in New York at the time, there was no more of that on the radio. And all you heard was shit that was talking about gangster stuff. And literally, me and everybody I know was hustling 6 months later. So like it worked. And when you talk about materialism and all this other stuff and like the clothes, like the reason why I even started hustling is because I wanted Tommy Hilfiger and Polo, you know what I mean? So I could be down with those kids. And like, that was the whole thing. And yeah, I watched it happen. So whatever he said with that meeting that happened, and you know, I have no doubt about it. You know, but that also goes into like now with the house music stuff. Like when I got to Chicago and started learning about that stuff, and at this point now, like I'm in with the people that literally started the culture. And I've gotten the history, I understand it, and I'll come back to, let's say, Pittsburgh, for example, talk to some people I know here from like the hood, black dudes, and they're like, you fuck with that house music shit? And they talk about it like it's like this thing that like, but I realized that because of the way they shut it down on radio promotion and all this other stuff, it never made it to cities like this. And, you know, that was also, in my opinion, a government plan to be like, we can't have black people talking about dancing and love and having a good time and all positive stuff. Like, no, we got to keep that this other shit, this NWA and all this other stuff going to those neighborhoods. And that's exactly what they did.
I think it's gotten even worse now. If you listen to the content of music today, I would say it's even worse.
I mean, what we're witnessing, and the thing is, it's so bad that, like, have you ever seen they clone Tyrone?
Amazing, yeah.
Amazing,
Incredible.
But that's pretty much it. Yeah. That's it. That's what's happening. And the thing is, we know it, and people still accept it. Like, you know that this is what's happening to you, and people still accept it. And that's one thing, like, for all the time that I like stepped away from hip hop, I refused to participate for a while. And like even now I don't really participate in it to that degree. But I think that there's an awakening. We've lived long enough to realize what happened, but at the same time, like they've gotten away with it and they did what they needed to do and they're on to the next hustle.
Chronic disease, I would say.
Yeah, chronic disease, something, obesity, all that type of stuff.
Ozempic.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? But like, you know, they made their money on the prisons. They got away with that whole thing and it worked ingeniously. And now who knows what's next.
I'd say maybe war, military-industrial complex and war.
Yeah, I do know this.
Disease would be the big
hustles.
You know,
I think I think that this country has done a number on the black population in this country. Like it's unbelievable what they did, and the systematic oppression and psychology type propaganda type shit that they did to them is unfucking believable. And like the fact is, when you look at it, and I always found this fascinating, like the fact that like white kids really got into this hip hop and like love gangster rap and all this other stuff. It's like this funny, how did that happen? And they don't even realize it. You know, speaking of Pittsburgh, for example, like let's look at somebody like Wiz Khalifa. Like I think the mystique of that plays into the fact of like, you know, you have a bunch of kids that are like, oh man, this dude just smokes weed and he's all this, but now it's like, you know, weeds become this open thing that anybody could do. But I think that was a big part of it early on. It's like, ooh, you're being naughty in a sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, at the time, there weren't weed rappers out there. That's, I think, why he brought Snoop into the fold. He was one of the only people. I mean, Dr. Dre, The Chronic, 2001, but it was always an afterthought. It was never central. And I think that Kid Cudi, Wiz Khalifa, you know, those two were really instrumental in terms of normalizing the use of marijuana in the community, and for better or for worse. And I think it also might have led to the legalization. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to give him all the credit, but I think the tides were already shifting.
Yeah.
But I think people like Wiz probably did do more for getting marijuana recreational and descheduled now.
I'm sure it all plays a part. Yeah, I think it all plays a part. But I also feel like in a lot of ways, this country is like giving up on itself. There are certain things like, remember I called you about that thing when you mentioned the porn thing and free porn and all that being out there. Like there's aspects of this country that they just are just like, fuck it, just let it go. You know what I mean?
But it's also being pushed onto us, just like how the hip hop violence was being pushed on the black community by, I don't know exactly who it was, but somewhere, CIA, you know, deep state, whatever. The free porn is coming from Canada. It's not coming, you know, where was Bang Bros located?
Florida.
Where's the AVN?
Yeah,
so there's some work happening in Florida, but the biggest sites, Pornhub, the other big sites, they come from Canada. They come from overseas.
Yeah, Pornhub is based in Canada. It's that particular company. But even with the weed thing, like I really feel like if everyone's just high and like relaxed on the couch, they're not going to be fighting back with what's really happening. And if you look at like everything right now, like, you know, they moved the goalposts so quickly on us, and people are just accepting of it. They're not really revolting on it at all, and it's just like, you know, why? Because they're comfortable, you know? Whether it's you have unlimited options to watch on Netflix, you can walk in the store, pick your strain, and, you know, that all plays into why people are just so lackadaisical about it all.
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I mean, I see the positives as well, right?
I
don't think anyone should be in jail for non-violent, you know, victimless crimes, as we say. I think it's a huge waste of lives, most importantly. Resources, certainly, but lives, right? The flower of the black youth of America sitting in a cell. And think of all the geniuses and all of the ideas and all of the art that we've discarded like rubbish.
I was in the elevator yesterday with a girl that lives in my building, and it's a white girl. And she goes outside with a chair like this and sits outside and tans on nice sunny days. You know, I would see her, hey, how you doing? She's one of the kinds that like the tan doesn't turn to a nice brown, she kind of turns red. But she obsessively does this. Sitting there thinking for a minute, like how odd it is that like all of the aspects of, let's just keep it honest, being black that are kind of shitted on, it's like at the same time, the people that shit on it, they're trying to be it, which is so weird to me. Like, I don't understand. Like, that's like a deep down insecurity somewhere in there. There's something really going on. Even when you look at like the lips thing, like all of that stuff is just like, yo, that's all stuff that's natural to Nubian people that now white people are trying to take for themselves. And it's just like, that's a weird shifting of it, because, you know, when you had black girls all wearing weave and trying to have hair that's not theirs and all this other stuff, or even to the point of like bleaching their skin to look lighter. But then you have the white girls that are getting lip injections and fucking BBLs, and it's just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Absolutely, the Kim Kardashians of the world.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Appropriation is what it is.
But to witness all this, like, Again, like I just sit back as a spectator and kind of watch it, and I have to take it in because you have to kind of understand what's going on with popular culture, to go with it. Like I think about something Jazzy Jeff said at the panel about being relevant. He's just like, being relevant is just paying attention. Like if you're constantly paying attention, you know what's up, you're always going to be relevant. It's the people that like just discard everything. But if you know what's happening, like I said, I like to stay aware of everything. I'm not necessarily participating, but I know what's going on.
So to get back to the story of your upbringing, we'll try to go a little linear. You're aware of hip hop. You're doing the break dancing. When did you start taking it serious? When did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with your life? When did the design come into play? Are you able to talk? Was it graffiti that took you there?
Yeah. So like going back to New York, we were all rapping. We were writing graffiti. And the way the b-boying happened, I'll never forget this. We were all at my house one day after school watching TV, and Beat Street came on, and that Roxy theme came on. It was like this crazy moment that me and all my friends, pretty much immediately after that, were like, come on, let's go to the basement, try some of that. And from that day on, we just started like fucking around and practicing. And I'll never forget my boy Ephraim, he was a natural. Like he picked up the moves quick as he was just like good at it. And we were all trying to do it. And then we started going to like, there was teen clubs in Long Island at the time where, on the weekends they would do the 18 to party, 21 to drink. Again, we're 15, 16 years old at this time. And then we started going to the city. So at the time in New York, the IDs were set up in a way where like, it was like a weird film on top of it. And me and all my friends were born in 1978. So being an artist, I was innovative where I take a little X-Acto knife, carve it out a little piece out, take a little colored pencil, put it in, and boom, now I'm born in 1973. So me and all my friends started being like, fuck it, let's go to the city, and started going to clubs in New York City at like 16 years old. We went to Limelight, we would go to the Tunnel. I'm trying to think of some of these spots. Cafe con Leche with Expo. And then the one that really changed me, and this is the moment for me, was we went to the Palladium. I remember we walked in and there was a famous staircase that was just all lit up. And I remember it to this day, I'm walking up this staircase because first and foremost, once you got past the doorman, it was like this feeling of like, yes, you know what I mean? Yes, we're in. Like we did everything too. We put on the khaki pants with the shoes, like just to make sure we try to get past them. And you just had to have your shit right. And I remember Palladium though, walk up those stairs, and the moment I walked into Palladium, and walked beyond the staircase, made the left, walk in, and walked and saw this huge fucking thing with all lights. And in that very moment, I thought to myself, whatever the fuck this is what I'm gonna do. I didn't know a position. I just knew whatever that was, I wanted to be associated with it. And from that point on, started being like, all right, what's up with this nightlife stuff? And started to learn about it. But it was very quickly after that, like a year and a half after that, when I had to leave New York and come to Pittsburgh. I was full-fledged nightlife at the time. And I remember even when my mom was coming here to look at apartments, like I came with her, and God bless her, she was like, all right, I know you like clubs, so I looked it up, and there's a club, and we're gonna go there. And it was like a Thursday or something, and she brought me to Metropole.
Nice.
It's called Metropole Industrial Dancing. She talked to the doorman and was like, this is my son, he's not gonna drink, because he's 21 and over. And it was like me and my mom and like nobody else in this whole entire place in Metropole on a Thursday listening to this music. And she's like, I know you like clubs, like God bless her, trying to like, be like, I know that this is what you like.
So cool.
Yeah, it was cool of her. And,
go ahead.
And that was that. So like, I came to Pittsburgh and there was just nothing really happening.
Right.
And I was like shocked by that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear about how you fixed that. So Strobe was the one who talked to me a lot about Metropole and about the bookings there, because there was this crossover between this industrial sound. Nine Inch Nails played there, obviously. Trent's from Ohio.
They were literally called Metropole Industrial Dancing. That was the name of it.
They had some really, really incredible art acts come through there. The other piece, I have to tell a funny story about fake IDs in New York. It'll be quick, I promise. When we were 18, 19, we wanted to go drink in New York. And we knew that they made fake IDs on Broadway. So we would go kind of where there were people selling fake Rolexes. And you'd be like Broadway just south of Times Square, and maybe 20, 30 something, right? 30 something in Broadway. And we went into some little booth shop, the four of us. We each paid $20, $25, maybe gave the guy $100. He made all four of us a ID. But the comedy was that my girlfriend at the time's ponytail was hanging behind the white towel that the man held up. So it got cut off in the picture, which was very funny. And then the other funny part was that when we went to the comedy club, which was on McDougal, I don't remember which one, but later on, my first New York City show would also be on McDougal in the Village, which was at Grizzly Pear. But this was some comedy show we went to so that we could drink because we were 21. And the girl who checked her IDs looked at them because we were all wearing the exact same outfits as we had in our IDs.
Yep. Yeah, they know. You know, but then, and again, they just laugh at it back then. They're like, go ahead, you know, like they give it, so a lot of times they give you the credit just for like putting in the effort, you know what I mean? Like, go ahead, bro, you know, we're good. When the rave scene came, that was, in my opinion, the shift for Metropole as well. You didn't want to just go dancing on the weekend, you know, like there was other stuff and they started booking some of the stuff. And like house music blended into that and they kind of mishmashed it all together. But, yeah, it was interesting. But to go back to the hip hop thing, like we were doing all the elements. We were doing graffiti, and you know, even at that, like I gotta give a shout out to my man Diabolic. Diabolic is a very well known rapper. He was with Immortal Technique and all that, but Diabolic was my graffiti partner. We used to go do pieces together. So like, and me and him were very, very serious about graffiti. And even when I first started doing events, like it was based in 4 elements of hip hop and trying to make that shit happen. I was one of those kids. Backpacker, I guess that's what they called them back then.
You brought a lot of that to Pittsburgh with you, that b-boy talent and that, not the graffiti as much because you'd already been arrested at the age of what, 13?
Yeah, I got arrested at 13 originally.
And so you were already writing graffiti.
But I was doing graffiti here. So me and my boy Alex and my boy Ali, I used to go behind the Squirrel Hill tunnels and do pieces and stuff like that and underneath the bridges. Wow. So like I was doing pieces here in the city, but I was also very weary about it because I was just like, you know, I didn't want to get in trouble for it. Like I'd been arrested for it before and I was just like, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it just to get some graffiti up. You know, I made sure that at all the hip hop events we did, I always did like black book competitions and that type of stuff just to kind of tie it in. But I can't say that I brought it here because there were always kids that were doing that. You know what I mean? Like, even when I first came, I got with my man Ian, shout out to him, and that was the first time like I met him and he brought me to his house. He would play me b-boy tapes. And I never saw anything like that, like for the B-Boy Summit and the Rocksteady reunions. Like, we were just kids that are out doing it. I never saw videotapes of it. And I used to just go to his house and for hours watch these VHS tapes. And that's when I really refined myself as a B-Boy, though, because I was here, I had nothing to do. I saw these tapes and I just started practicing, and I literally practiced like 7 or 8 hours a day because I had nothing else to do. And that's where like I refined it, where when I came out and started hitting, like I was on a different level than a lot of people because I put the time in.
There's a couple different styles of breaking. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the technical side for people who actually would know.
The original like old school breaking was more like footwork and what we used to call flavor, was like, you know, you're creative with it and having a good time. But then like there was always the gymnastic aspect where people were doing like these gymnastic style maneuvers. And again, crowd pleasers, they love those. Like typical people that don't understand, they see these crazy big maneuvers and they're like, wow. So there was a divide at one point where you had people that were just doing these power moves that were like these gymnastic moves versus people that were flavor, that were kind of dancing. The key is trying to blend it all together as best possible. That's something I always try to do. I was definitely more towards the flavor end of it with the dancing. Yeah, that's the separation for the most part. So like, again, most people are wowed when they see these crazy big moves.
Head spins,
that kind of stuff. But, you know, for us as B-boys, we're like cool, but how many times can you watch someone spin on their heads? Like, it's about how you're going to incorporate that head spin into this other move or into this other thing. And then, most importantly, what is that?
It's tornado.
Oh, tornado. Oh, yeah, look at that.
My wife always says, like, to take these things really seriously. So this is not actually a good room to be in for a tornado.
All right, pause.
I think we should just pause. Let's at least just take a little break. There's a better room for us in the basement, but I'm not that scared. No question. That will be absolutely a viral moment. So we just paused for this tornado warning. Went outside and yeah, like it definitely looks...
yeah, it might go down.
Auspicious. Inauspicious? Inauspicious.
That's like a $7 word right there?
Highly inclement, yeah. So... we're in Pittsburgh, you've arrived, the scene is lacking. There's spots though, you made it to Metropole. You were here in the 90s, mid-90s, late 90s.
1996 is when I came, like end of 1996. There weren't really club things happening at all. It was all rave stuff. So one of the first things I got invited to a girl I met, it was a rave above the Chinatown Inn. They used to throw parties there downtown. So that was one of the first things I went to. And that's where I met a lot of the B-boys that were breaking at the time. You know, I showed up and did what I did and didn't know anybody there. So that was that. You really look nervous right now.
Dude, these bands of rain are no joke, man. I survived a couple hurricanes in Miami. I was down there for Irma. I was down there for Matthew. Not Andrew. My wife survived Andrew. Survived. Sounds a little sketchy.
It does.
She was alive during it.
Yeah, I remember going to like the hurricane parties at the, I can't remember the name of the one building now. The one building right in South Beach that everybody moves to first.
Is it a club?
No, I'm talking about an apartment building. Anyway, they used to throw hurricane parties. It would just be different parties in different apartments throughout the whole time. Everyone's doing drugs and fucking wild out. Drug dealers would go set up in different apartments and move like every 5 hours and text message where they're gonna be. And yeah, it's wild shit.
Wow. So there was something you had experienced at the tunnel at the New York clubs that you wanted to bring here.
Yeah, it just wasn't here. You know what I mean? It's still not here. There's an aspect of nightlife and people partying and having a good time that just was missing. Places like this, it's interesting because you always get like a few people within the scene that are those people, but there's not enough. There's not enough people.
To reach critical mass.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Enough. I was just watching a video from something in Cleveland the other day, and it was just like, you have like 5 people in the party that are like, that's it. But if you had 30 of those people, you know, like it's like the 100th monkey kind of thing. You just need this many to do it, then everyone else kind of follows. People are too scared or something, or, you know.
It's just a small market.
Yeah, small market,
it's
exactly.
Small place.
Right, it's just not the numbers. That's what it is.
Yeah. And it doesn't have a tourism side, right?
Zero tourism
here. You
here.
can always do a party on a Tuesday and have Europeans or, you know,
Yeah,
whoever
well,
coming.
the other thing is, in a place like New York, you have people that are coming that they don't know anybody and they want to do something. Like, they have that energy. Like, it's the same type of energy that the people that got on a boat from Europe and like, I'm going to start a brand new life with zero money in their pocket. That is the type of initiative that makes things happen. And once people get comfortable and they don't do that anymore, that was also a difference between me and a lot of my friends in New York. When I would go back to visit, they never left Long Island. And when I was there, even when I lived there, I was like taking the train into the city whenever I could, even just to walk around. That's me. Like, I'm never the type that's going to be like staying in one place. I'm always going to be kind of chasing this next thing. And I think I've done that throughout my whole life pretty much.
You were able to find some folks because there was this influential flavor crew in Long Island that you ended up actually porting here. You had a
Yes, that's what we used to call our crew in New York. So then whenever I started throwing parties and stuff and doing what I did, I kept that name in order to spread it. I was part of a b-boy crew here called the Jedi Monks, and then the guy that started that put me in charge of it, so I switched the name. You know, I just started doing everything under that. So I was doing all my parties under that name and all that stuff, and that was the initial push.
kind of a long name.
Well, we used to call it IF. I mean, it's conducive with the time. Influential flavor, like if you just think about the names of shit back then, that's what that was. I would never name something that now. You know, back then it was like, it worked.
It also overlaps with that dance technique you were talking about, how flavor was actually a
Correct.
word used to describe those type of movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about the spot? That was a place that it was like an after hours that you...
Yeah, so, you know, when you're in nightlife, the dream is always like, oh, I want to get a nightclub, you know? So, like, I was doing a bunch of parties at the time at all the top spots, and we were doing well. And then somebody came to us with the opportunity, like, hey, do you want your own place? And we jumped at it. It was an after-hours club. You know, here in Pittsburgh, as you know, bars closed at 2 a.m. So we started off doing a spot that opened up at 2 a.m. and after. The spot was actually really cool because we had 2 rooms. So we had the main room, which was playing the hip-hop and stuff that people would like. But then we also did a chill room that was always playing acid jazz and Saint Germain and chill stuff for people that just want to, like, relax. So we always offered 2 environments, and that went really well. But, you know, it's crazy because I owned my first place at 22 years old. You know, but I learned a lot from owning the place, though, because there's so many responsibilities. You have to pay for the dumpster, and, you know, like, there's all these different things that you just don't think about that open up your eyes and make you understand what it actually takes to make a place run. But one of the most important things I learned was the money in nightclubs and parties isn't necessarily in the parties. The consistent money is in all the stuff that people need to make that happen.
What do you mean?
The first thing everyone needs to buy at that time when they're doing a party is flyers. So people would joke that I was the flyer guy, but I was also the guy that had information on what everybody was doing first. You know what I mean? Like, information is power. Like, I know every single thing that's happening because I was the guy that was printing how they got the word out or designing how they got the word out. That was automatically an in. The flyer was it. So,
What makes a good flyer?
I mean, that's very subjective. Honestly, I say this all the time. Like, you could scribble something, the who, what, when, where on a napkin, and it's a good flyer. You know what I'm saying? It does the job. You don't really need all the bells and whistles to really make something happen. There's a lot of components that go into whether or not something's going to work, and it, by no means does it depend on the flyer. Now, in my opinion, I always try to make a flyer some sort of artistic piece that catches people's attention in some way. So that I think is important. But, you know, the beauty of flyers, and one of the reasons why I always like doing them is because you can kind of do whatever you want. As long as you have the who, what, when, where, you know, if you look at like the rave flyers, like a lot of those fonts and shit they would use, like they were like the coolest technical fonts, but you couldn't even fucking read them. You know what I'm saying? But they made a cool flyer. So, you know, for me personally, I always try to make my stuff functional, where you want to be artistic, but you don't want to be too artistic to the point that you lose the functionality of the who, what, when, where. But, you know, you want to add that flavor to it to make it catchy and artistic and interesting. So that's it.
Is there a difference in terms of the strategy or the actual design when you're designing for print or for the internet or digital?
Yeah, there was definitely a change. Whenever you had, back then for print, you literally had to have all of the information of something on there. You know, like this was it. Like somebody might only get this. So you have to make sure that they have all the info. You know, in today's world, it's a little bit different because the flyer is something that kind of catches their attention, and then you could put all of the other information in the post text. So like back in the day, you used to have a front and a back of a flyer, and on the back, you used to have like a paragraph that described everything you wanted. You don't need that paragraph anymore. Like it's just not necessary. So that's an area. Post text is something that you could utilize for all that additional information. And to this day, I'm constantly dealing with old school promoters who still want to put like the drink special on a flyer. And I'm like, nobody's coming because of the drink special. Or if you want to put that in the post text. And you know, they don't get it. And you can really see the difference.
What's the post text?
For example, your Instagram, whenever you have the flyer, and then underneath the text that you write, like that's your
like the caption.
Your caption, your post text. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want it to get muddied up.
Yeah, and also when you're dealing with something that's on a screen on Instagram, you only have so much space. You're gonna have to go really small with a lot of stuff if you want to get it all on there. It doesn't make sense, and it's gonna be overseen. So, I saw this interesting thing. It was Lil Wayne actually, and he was just like, the goal is to get people to stop scrolling. So whenever somebody's scrolling through their phone, you know, and they're going, what actually gets them to put their thumb down and stop it? And then not only stop it, maybe think something so cool that they're going to hit share and send it to somebody else. That's the goal. Is it good enough to do that? Because most of the time you just keep scrolling.
I saw this really sad video of a baby doing the scrolling motion without a phone.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. We've been conditioned in ways like, you know, but also I study stuff like that. For example, my Instagram account, it doesn't take more than 2.5 thumb scrolls to get down to the bottom. I called like 100 motherfuckers I know, and I was like, yo, do me a favor, let's go to someone's Instagram right now. All right, cool. Like, start scrolling. How far did you make it before you clicked into something? Like, I did my own market research to figure that out. In my opinion, nobody scrolls further than 2.5 thumb scrolls down someone's Instagram account when they land on it. So that's all I have on my account.
That was one of the first things I noticed about you, was that your Instagram was different from anything I'd ever seen. It was all one view. Every picture connected to another picture.
Yeah, it's seamless. It's designed to be one piece that everything connects into each other and everything makes sense. And every single cover image has to do with whatever the actual post is. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes if you were to watch everything. But if you start at the bottom and scroll to the top, you pretty much get to see what my life was like in highlights for the last 2.5 years.
The spot was what years?
I don't know. That's hard to say.
Late 90s to mid 2000s?
We're talking a long time ago, maybe the 2000 or something like that, because I had left Pittsburgh in 2005, I think.
Okay. Yeah, you left right when I got here.
Yeah, 2005 is when I went to Miami. So like it was a couple years before that, because after the spot, I was involved with Mint, which was a part of Bash in the strip district. Then I also had another after hours called Juicy.
Wow.
Yeah.
You also were booking DJs, and you were one of the first people to book Nugget. Pittsburgh's biggest club DJ.
Yeah. I put Nugget on. I was booking Bonix very early on. Again, I was, I was making shit happen. So a lot of people, I put them on and gave them gigs and gave them some of their biggest shit, and that's what it is.
A lot of DJs listen to this podcast. Well, a lot of our audience is made up of DJs. a large percentage.
Sure.
What were you looking for when you were deciding who to book? What would make you gravitate to someone rather than someone else?
I mean, people that knew how to rock a party back then, we used to call it top 40 back then, which would be like the commercial music. It always had to be a perfect blend. Stuff I was into mixed with top 40, because you want to cater to the general audience, people that are going to clubs, but you also don't want to lose the authentic people that know what shit is. So like a blend somehow between the two. But Pittsburgh, again, is an interesting audience. Considering the nightclubs go from 10 to 2, realistically, you only really have to have your highlights happening for 2 hours of the night, So like, how are you going to hit them at that time? And audiences, you can see it now, like there are a lot of DJs who are getting gigs who shouldn't be DJing outside their house yet, but they can, because this is an audience where your transitions don't even matter. By the time they're drunk, as long as you're playing the hits that they like, they're going to think you're good. So yeah, there's a lot of people here right now that I don't know how they have careers, but they do.
There's a lot of who do you know kind of thing. It's like
this is very much a social activity kind of place, but like, let me give shout outs to the people I think actually deserve it. Like, I still think Nugget is one of the best DJs in the city. I think he's fantastic. PDC is fucking amazing from a technical level. Selector, Big Phil, Digital Dave, Nate has always held it down. And then some of the new people I've gotten introduced to, B-Ren. B-Ren is actually, he's really dope. The kid Magic Mike, he knows what he's doing,
Killer.
Although he needs to change his name.
I don't know. I love those movies. I'll just say it. And the best one was Louis C.K. doing the imitation of the guy from Magic Mike 2.
Right, yeah. See, this is the thing, though. I'm going to tell you what I see.
You cannot touch, but I see a lot of lawbreakers out there tonight.
For example, somebody just sent me a flyer from some dude in, I think, like South Carolina, and his name is DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Oh, yeah. Like, I've seen him play. I've seen him play in Charleston.
There you go.
Yep, he played a frat party.
Like, here's the thing. How far is this guy's career really going to go?
Why do you think I went to see him?
Okay. My point is,
I was so mad.
Listen, I'm mad. But the thing is, like, you're limiting your growth because you're always going to be attached to this comparison thing by having a name like that. So, like, you have to change it up and to become your own thing. But to some degree, at the same time, if I'm playing devil's advocate with myself, this is a city where nightclubs literally used to go to other cities, find the hot nightclub, and then open up a club here and name themselves that. And people are okay with it. Like, oh, we're Pittsburgh's version of this. Like, Privé was one of my clients, but there was a place here called Privé. Privé was one of the hottest clubs in Miami, and you're going to name yourself after that? But Pittsburgh people like, we're going to Privé, and they accept that. It's a weird psychology that I personally will never understand, but,
Yeah, I think people are scared to be legendary sometimes. I talked with Suze about it. She runs a yoga studio called Om Lounge, and I told her how cool it is that she didn't put the word yoga in the studio name. If people in Pittsburgh go to a Thai restaurant called Thai Fusion or Thai Monkey or Tie Me Up. Yep. It's like, if you want to be legendary, you have to be willing to take on your own moniker, you have to become something legendary.
Yeah.
You have to become your own thing.
If you would have said the name Google 15 years ago, we would say you were crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds ridiculous. I was on the phone yesterday with Green Lantern because, that's somebody I'm fortunate enough to work with. And he's been doing these jazz projects now. And he basically has decided that he is going to name and title what he's doing. Because it's essentially, if you look back at like Mark Farina with the mushroom jazz, that was a thing at the time that people could refer back to. But there's yet to be anybody who has taken like the hip hop drum beats and the references from 90s and 2000 and incorporated with jazz and done it in a way where it's its kind of own genre or subgenre. So he wants to properly label what it is. And people initially are like, oh, hip hop jazz, or what, and like these corny names, but we're coming up with something. And I think we actually came up with something that is its own thing, and jazz may or may not even be a part of the name. We're going to name it something else that lasts, that makes sense. Like, I want people after the fact to be like, oh shit, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that has so much more value.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. It should, right? It shouldn't have the word jazz because it'll cheapen it in some way. It has to take on its own, it has to grow legs. If you want an idea to walk, it has to grow legs.
The problem is, in today's world, I don't think that there's ever going to be another scene again. Like, I'm pretty sure the rave scene was the final one. Because there's never a thing that has enough time to establish a foundation that's strong enough. Because by the time something even starts bubbling, there's a clothing line, there's an Instagram account, there's this, you know what I mean? And it's just like that shit kind of, it kills something before it could even get started. That's why you're going to consistently see reruns of shit or remakes of stuff. And it's kind of fucked up. Even hip hop, for example, what they're doing now, in my opinion, should not be called hip hop. It should have its own name. It's a subgenre
trap.
underneath it.
Yeah.
Trap, that's cool. Like, it needs its own label and subgenre because it gets confusing because then you start having the old people be like, that ain't hip hop.
They call it something else in the UK. They call it grime.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Grime, that's perfect. Yeah, I thought that was a great thing. I fuck with all that shit.
The new thing that I've been kind of interested in and think might be that kind of next genre you're talking about, that next scene, is like the Charlie XCX punk, like hyper, I think they're calling it hyper pop. Reminds me a little of Crystal Castles, distorted club music,
Yeah,
very
I'm not
fast
down.
electronic music.
Yeah, I'm not
it's
down.
cool.
I mean, I find that interesting. I've been very big recently just on the resurgence of UGK. That's my shit. Shout out to my man Jeremy Sylvester. Like, they're killing it over there with their Urban Dubs events and their streaming stuff. Like, based out of Birmingham, UK, like they're murdering it, and I'm very big on that right now. I even did a couple streams for them with Chicago DJs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You ended up going to Miami in 2005, you said. You said there was a good job offer, basically. And
No,
then-
there was no job offer at that time. The second time I went to Miami was a good job offer.
Okay.
So the first time I went to Miami, I was in Pittsburgh still, and I just remember like it was definitely slowing down. So in a city like this, in my opinion, the city wants you to leave. If you stay for too long, people start being like, what happened? Like, you're good enough, you should be someplace else. You need to leave. You can't stay here because at some point, they're like almost upset that you haven't gone someplace else. And I felt like that was happening. And it was two things. Number one, I went to go visit my grandfather. He was on his deathbed. And he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm still doing the same stuff, the parties and whatnot. And he's like, okay, so what are you going to do? And I was just like, honestly, I'm thinking about going someplace else because the saying that I always said was, you're only the king of your domain, like, or being a big fish in a small pond. And he's just like, listen, he goes, whatever you do, you have to go to wherever they're the best at doing it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go to wherever is known for that. If you want to be an actor, you have to go to Hollywood. And I was like, well, Miami is the place that everyone talks to about nightlife. Like, I was like, if I really can do this nightlife thing that I did in Pittsburgh, and yeah, okay, I might have my name ringing out and all sorts of stuff, I have to go to where it's at. And I went to Miami. I decided to go, and I literally packed my trunk with some clothes, got in my car, and the girl I was with at the time, like, she was like, so we're going to Miami? I didn't think she was going to come with me, but I was like, sure. And we went to Miami and got an apartment and didn't know a single person. And I was like, I'm going to break into the Miami scene.
Incredible. Where did you move?
We moved to Hollywood, Florida, like right by the casino. And I would drive down to South Beach and start going to stuff. And I printed up some business cards. I said, Moe Knows best design. And I was like, well, there's already too many people here doing printing, so I can't do printing. So I could break in with design. And I started going to the different clubs and walking up to DJs and saying, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. And one of the first clients I got was a guy by the name of Joe Dirt. He gave me an opportunity for something. My second client was my girlfriend at the time, was answering Craigslist ads, and she started interning for Miami Inc., that television show.
Dope.
So the one day she came home from work and she's like, hey, the people from Miami Inc., they need to get business cards. Do you want to design them? And I was like, yeah. How much does it pay? She goes, they have no budget. And I was like, okay. I knew it would be a good look, but I tried throwing my 2 cents, just being a hustler. And I was like, well, listen, ask them if I can be on their top 8 friends on MySpace in trade for the thing. And she's like, I run the MySpace page, so I could probably make that happen. So the next day she goes, done deal. They said yes. So I did the business cards for Miami Inc., and they put me on their top 8 friends on MySpace. And then my MySpace started going crazy because it was a big television show at the time. And within like a week or two, I got hit up by a company by the name of Creative Complex that was like, we saw your stuff, and we're starting a company that does design for nightclubs in South Beach, and we want to know if you want to be down. It was literally a startup, and they had the Opium Group as clients. They were doing Mansion, Privé, all that stuff. And I got down with the Creative Complex and started doing stuff for all of the hottest clubs in South Beach. And this happened within 6 months of being down there.
Do you think that people should take on more pro bono work, like DJs, designers, freelancers, in order to get their careers started?
Yeah, I think that when you're getting yourself out there, you should be doing as much shit as possible. Like, I know that there's this thing of like, everyone wants to argue, oh man, get money and this and that. And on the flip side of that, there's also a large amount of people that are in top positions that take advantage of the fact that there are people willing to work for free and do all this stuff. But look, when you're trying to get yourself out there, you got to do what you got to do. And even to this day, like if you look at DJs, since there's been this explosion of DJs, there's a constant thing of young DJs who are willing to come play for free because they want to have the credit of playing at this major place. And they're going to take away from the money of people that might be more established, more experienced. But that's the game. If you actually are in that top position, you have to consistently keep yourself and be that good at what you do that even somebody that's coming and offering their services for free isn't going to be able to take your spot.
Become undeniable.
Yeah, there has to be that much of a difference because that's always going to be a thing, especially with whatever you do as it becomes more popular. And one of the funny things I see on Instagram and all this stuff all the time is like these DJs who are like new at this shit, if I'm going to be honest, complaining about people coming to take their spot or being willing to work for free. Like, it's like this cycle that happens. And I'm sure I probably complained about it at some point too, but like, that's just part of the game.
Definitely. Yeah. Getting undercut. People
Undercut.
sometimes call it.
Yeah, exactly.
That it never really happened to me that way, but I got like out-friended where I remember when McFly came to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. It was like right after you left, like 2006 when I started DJing here. And I had a gig in the South Side at S-Bar. Best gig. But Bonix brought McFly in from, I guess, Florida or wherever he was, hanging out. And he was better friends with Bonix. He was living in his crib. And
yeah, listen. The social aspect of things, that's part of the game. Like, people get mad at that and they talk about, people like to say it's all about who you know. It's definitely not all about who you know. That plays a big factor. But like, yeah, you want to know the right people, but at the same time, like when somebody does give you that chance because they heard of you, what do you have to prove at that point? Like, if you don't have what it takes, like you might know the people, it doesn't matter. You got to be that good. Politics is always part of it. You got to know how to play the game. And there's always the artistic mindset of people that are like, I don't want to have to go out there and smooth or this, that, but there's a part that you got to do it. You have to go out there and shake the hands. One thing that DJs always ask me, they're always like, well, how do DJs get gigs? And I'm just like, what place do you want to play at? Start going there and hanging out. The amount of times that I've heard about a DJ who goes to a place, doesn't necessarily go to the owner and be like, I want to play, or you should book me, but just meets them and hangs out and lets them know they're a DJ. And then on some Thursday, the main DJ that plays all of a sudden can't make it. And they go, do you have your thumb drive with you? And guess what? Now you're the new resident DJ. And that's how it happens. You have to put yourself out there. And like the amount of people that are just sending out EPKs and thinking that they're going to get gigs because of that, like that ain't it. You got to be around. I see it constantly of just, we pick from the people who are around. The first people you look at when you need something are the people who are around you. Who could do it that's around me? If there's no one there, then you reach out to somebody else. If you put yourself around, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I see it with a lot of the people that are trying to be musicians, working behind the bars, doing even bar backing or bartending, working security, just to, have that face time that you're talking about.
Exactly.
The availability is more important than ability. Both are crucial.
Yep.
The third one is affability, right? Not being a douchebag. Having so many people like.
People's attitude fucks it up a lot. It really does.
Yeah, that was bad for me. One time I did a Prince tribute at Goldmark. Last time I played at Goldmark, I think. And Prince had just died, like the week that I got, like, I'd been booked for a while, and then it was time for the show, and Prince had just died. But instead of playing Prince records, I did Fresh Prince tribute to kind of...
Spice it up, do something different?
No, to, like, be an asshole, basically. Anyway.
I can see that not going over very well.
People were pissed. So, was there anyone you could learn from in Miami about design or about promotion?
Design, 100%.
Club promotion?
Design, the club promotion down there was a completely different beast. So, like, let's just put that there. What you need to do promotion-wise in a market like that is completely different. One of the things I saw first was, I remember whenever we tried to book major people to come to Pittsburgh, you'd book somebody and they would want $10,000 to come. They need 2 first-class tickets. They need a hotel room with this. They want transportation. By the time you're done with everything, you're at $20,000 to bring somebody to the city. And in Miami, that same exact person would call you and say, hey, I'm in the city down here. Give me $2,000, I'll stop through. And I was just like, what the fuck? These same people that we were trying to get that were just trying to like kill us. Now we're like offering to stop through for like a fraction of the money. That's when I really learned like location. If you're where they want to be, it's a different ball game. So like that was the first thing. But then as far as design, when I worked for Creative Complex, there was a guy by the name of Ruben who was an unbelievable designer. I taught myself design. So like to this day, I'm taking tutorials that I'm like, oh, that's how you're supposed to do it, or terms, and I just do what I do. And that was one of the first times I got around around somebody who was school taught and started like really showing me like this tool does this. And that's where I learned a lot during that time. But once somebody starts to show me some stuff like that, I'm the type who I'm going to dive in and I'm going to try to learn it and find out what's up. So, but again, it was just exposure. My first time I was exposed to it. So.
What ended up happening next? You ended up in Chicago?
What happened next was Creative Complex sold. Within 9 months of me being down with Creative Complex, there was a whole thing at the time between Oberyn Group and their number one promoter. Their number one promoter was the investor in Creative Complex, and it sold. And when it sold, I'm not going to go into details about that, but it was a choice at that point of, do I want to stay with the company and go with the new owner of the company and continue doing this, or do I want to take my check and go and do what I do? And I decided at that point to do my own thing. And 2 clients came with me. One client was Sobe Live, which is known as being like the first place in South Beach promoting trap and all that different shit. Gucci Mane, like this was the only place in South Beach that played that. The second client was the 400 Club, which was a group of upscale black promoters that used to do a nice dinner party for like the urban clientele, but it wasn't the trap shit. It was like people that dressed nice and wanted to go out. South Beach was notoriously racist, where they didn't really let those people in places and that type of stuff. But 400 Club made money. And coincidentally, again, timing, it was like 6 months after that I think the housing market crash thing happened.
2008.
Yeah, sometime around there. And at that time, South Beach became a ghost town, and the clubs weren't doing shit. And because the clubs weren't doing anything, they were like, well, let's let the blacks in, essentially. And 400 Club ended up getting Mansion, Privé, and spots in South Beach that notoriously would never let them throw a party. And that ended up being the most incredible years of my life financially, because we were doing all this shit. Like, that's when Sean Combs, fucking Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Busta Rhymes, like every major act that you could imagine in hip hop that was coming to South Beach to throw a party, I was doing the flyers and stuff for all of that. Crazy run.
Doing the flyers, promoting the shows?
I wasn't helping with promoting as much. They had their own thing. But I was the art director for the 400 Club. So I was involved on the top level with everything that they had going on.
Do you save all the flyers?
So, no. But what I did was I have a poster design that I did where I took all of the major flyers and did like this crazy collage that I designed all of them in at one point.
They were also the bar at the spot, right?
No, those were early on flyers. Yeah, that was Pittsburgh stuff. Yeah, the Pittsburgh bar. We had I don't even know what you call the process, but we put all the flyers from all my parties leading up to that. I have a lot of those flyers. There's memorable pieces, which was also something cool because people would come and look down and think, oh shit, know. So.
Yeah, I mean, you could think of doing like an NFT with all of that digital art, right? Putting it all together. And
this is like something that people don't really put a value on. They don't think about it as being a thing. But like, part of me feels like in 50 years from now or 100 years from now, people are gonna look back and be like, wait, hold on, this person was involved in all of this different stuff? Like, it's just this connection with all of these different pieces that people don't understand. I mean, again, I keep myself behind the scenes for a reason, but it connects in a way that's actually pretty interesting if you were to look at it. As far as culture over the period of time, over a 25-year period that I've managed to have my hands in, that, some of it has gone on to be major influence in how some things have gone.
Tell me the story of how you ended up leaving Miami.
I was with the 400 Club and I was doing all their shit. And I remember there was a point in time, like, 400 Club was one of these businesses that they made so much money in their parties that they were unorganized everywhere else. It was a shit show. But like every single week, it would make itself up. You know what I mean? Like, you could run a shitty business, and then if every single week you walk out and your party does, it all makes up for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it was. And I remember at one point, that's when I got really like frustrated just with nightlife. It was the one time in my life that I was like, I'm done with nightlife. And that's when I took the contract doing the porn thing. So I was with Bang Bros. I oversaw all the stuff with Bang Bros. I did that for like a year. But then that was also the year that everything was going down. So I like witnessed the sinking ship. So
what was going down? I don't know the story.
The tube sites all came in. So like basically the whole entire porn industry nobody was paying for porn anymore, but there was so much leftover money that all the porn companies were advertising with each other. So that advertising money was what was keeping things going. But every time that the money's being advertised with the other company, people are taking out the money for the salaries and this and that. And when I was with the company, every single week, it was just like 5 more people that had $120,000 positions gone, and they were replacing them with interns. And this was is happening. I was just witnessing it, and I was like, oh shit. And then they offered me the severance package to get out, and I took it. It was good money.
So it was a short run, but
Very short run.
you were able to.
I learned so much about like online
see-
marketing and all that shit. Like, the porn industry notoriously is the most innovative industry when it comes to online stuff. Like, they are it. And the amount of shit that I learned about online stuff during that time was crazy. And that's when I left and I was like, okay, I'm going to do some online shit. And I dove into that. And I was traveling and just doing that whole thing. Then I decided I was going to get back into nightlife. And I had left Miami, and I was out of Miami for a little while, traveling for like 6 months. And at that time, I remember I was like going around and like visiting different promoters who I did business with and going to their parties and hanging out, doing a social thing, being the guy from Miami that did the flyers, just show up in town and go buy bottles and hang out and go to their parties with them. Like, that helps out a lot with business relationships and solidify some things. So I did that for a good 6 months, ended up in Chicago in the summertime, which was the most fantastic thing ever, and met a girl. And then I did the winter, and I was like, I'm not really into the winter. And I was starting to get something going there. And then like going into the second winter, I got the call to come back down to Miami with an offer. Yeah. That was pretty much something I couldn't refuse.
You must have also seen how the industry works. I wonder if you could talk
100%.
a little bit about the porn industry and kind of how does it work? Where do they get their money from? And at that point, and kind of how was it? What is it?
People used to pay for porn, which is something that's crazy to think about. And like, I think the membership at the time was $27.95 or something like that in order to join. And that was for a month. And you would pay this in order to have access. So, they had a bunch of affiliates that were constantly promoting. And that was the first time I ever saw that an affiliate got 100% of the sale. And I didn't understand it. I was like, so if you sell this membership for me, I'm going to give you the full membership fee. You make 100%. Whoa. Right? So now you have all these people that are out there working hard as to sell memberships because they're getting 100% of that sale, which is unheard of. Well, the thing is, in the statistics, whenever somebody signed up for the company, they had the analytics and knew that most people stayed for 3.5 months before they canceled their membership. So yeah, I might give you the first month, but I know I'm getting 2.5. So you feel great that you're getting 100%, but in reality, I'm keeping it alone.
They just get the first month.
Correct.
That 100% commitment. That's it. Now, when you say people used to pay for porn, people have been paying for porn, but it had shifted. It was DVDs and VHS tapes.
Yeah, the DVD business stayed for a long time, but
then it swapped out and it became streaming once the streaming technology became good enough. Once the internet bandwidth shifted from 56K modems to Wi-Fi to streaming. Sometime in the 2000s, the internet picked up, and then people they didn't need VHS tapes, they didn't need DVDs, and this was huge because you didn't have to get it mailed to your house.
No,
I mean, think of how
you didn't have to go to the store and go buy a DVD and
in the seedy part of town.
Listen, there were many times I was
behind the curtain.
Like that industry went from being in theaters to the internet changed everything, and then there was a short period of time that people were paying for membership. The same way you pay for access to all the stuff on Netflix, that's what you did for access to different porn sites. Yes. And Bang Bros, their network was insane. And I was overseeing content for all of them. Every single thumbnail image that got picked for deciding on this and all that different stuff, like the amount of stuff I saw was ridiculous.
Some of that stuff is dark.
Listen, it did a number on me, I'll be honest. Like, I was never the same after that just because you get desensitized to some stuff and it changes you. But as far as from a technology standpoint, I learned a lot about the internet and how things are running and what was what. Whenever somebody would cancel their membership, they would instantly email them and say, hey, you can come back for 50% less. You know what I mean? And how many people would be like, fuck it, okay. It was all very interesting.
A lot of that content was being made in Florida.
Miami was the Reality Kings and Bang Bros. And Bang Bros was famous for their one promotion called the Bang Bust. It's what is called the perception of reality. And it was really interesting about that is like people were watching that. It wasn't even about the porn. It was about seeing how they were going to kick the girl out of the van, which goes into a whole nother psychology of like the type of direction porn went in, where it's just like people degrading females in a way. Like you're not even watching for the sex. You're watching to see like, let's see how they're going to throw out the van. People would watch it and they legitimately were like, are they really driving around South Beach in a van, just randomly picking up girls and offering them money? And then, you know what I mean? Like, no, everything in it, porn is very, very scripted. To be honest, it was the most corporate job I have ever had in my life. which is crazy to say. Everything in it is thought of ahead of time, and it's 100% fake. I mean, I learned that with Miami Ink as well. Like watching reality television and seeing the way that that would go down. I can never watch the reality TV format ever again. But people are fooled by that shit. There's a lot of people that are legitimately fooled by it and don't understand how it goes.
I think the reality TV is kind of like the modern art, right? It's nobody actually likes it, but we've been tricked into liking it, even though it's devoid of artistic integrity.
Yeah.
Because we're basically, it's a psyop, is the way I think of
Yeah,
it.
no, I mean, just think about Jerry Springer. I watched something recently with the guy, Ross, the hip hop guy, and he was talking about how, like, that's what hip hop is now. We're just going to continue going down worse and worse as far as these characters who are Jerry Springer characters that they're going to prop up because we can't help but to look away.
It's a train wreck.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, and that's what's happening. So, I don't know. People decide what they want to be a part of, like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you've decided to be a part of something with integrity, right? You left that corporate job, and do you like freelancing better than the corporate world, or you can kind of weave between both seamlessly?
I like my freedom, you know what I mean? Like, for sure, but just like anybody else, I like money, you know what I'm saying? Like, money's freedom. You can do a lot with freedom. And I think, like, in order to survive in the world of the arts, you have to know how to seamlessly balance both. Do some things and get that check, and then that lets me do this DJ that no one ever heard of him, that's on his come up, and I could do his job for $200 because that's what he's got. Well, doing this other thing, subsidize that. You know what I'm saying? So it's a balance.
It's really interesting to me how you got into this world of house music. Was that a Chicago connection? You're running the Frankie Knuckles Instagram. You're doing design work for Terry Hunter. You're at the Grammys. What's going on with house music? You're this big hip hop guy, born in reggae. Now it's house.
I went hip hop, but then I went nightlife. Hip hop is a part of that, but it's its own separate thing.
But you're doing shows with the 4 elements represented, teaching people. No, you're a break dancer. You put out a VHS tape called Footwork in Pittsburgh.
That was the start. That was the start. And at some point, I kind of left that stuff to go into nightlife. And I remember specifically because, for example, I put all this effort into throwing a 4 Elements party and do all this different stuff and paying everybody. And, like, let's say I threw a party and got 500 people to come out, and I would leave with $500. But then this club asked me to book a DJ, and I put 4 DJs in there, and that was it. And I didn't have to do any of the other stuff, and I would leave with $2,500. As an adult, you start going in that direction. So that's what happened with nightlife. The thing is, by the time all that stuff happened with the house music stuff in Chicago, I was on a decade of doing all of the design stuff for pretty much the whole entire open format club scene. All of the stuff that happened after DJ AM and all of the DJs and everything that were influenced by that, all the EPKs, all the logos for a decade. That's what I did. I got up to 300 DJs on my client list. I don't know anybody that's even close, realistically. And I would go to Chicago because I went there to go dance and have a good time. And I didn't do any business in Chicago. I did a couple open format guys, but I was always hanging out at the house music spots. I ended up dating a girl who owned 5 magazine, and she was a DJ as well. For years, I would go out to stuff with her and be around these superstar house music guys, Kashmir, all these people. But I never, ever pushed what I did on them. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I like enjoying myself. They don't know what the fuck I do, whatever. Coincidentally, it was her who was like, can you do me a favor? She was very close with the people from the Frankie Knuckles Foundation. And she's like, he's having trouble getting people to the website, right? Like, can you please help him out? And I remember being like, I'm not interested in doing any business with house music people. I don't think they have any money. My people are doing the clubs. Like, I'm good. Like, I'll pass. She's like, please, please, please. And I was like, all right. So the first job I took was for the Frankie Knuckles Foundation. And pretty much instantly, Frederick was like, yo, you're amazing at this. Within 2 days of doing stuff for the Frankie Knuckles Foundation, I got a call from Terry Hunter, who had got my number from him. And I did one job, and he was just like, you're the best I've ever seen at this, and I want you to do the chosen few. And I was like, okay, 40,000 people every single year in Jackson Park for 30-something years. And, they wanted me to brand the whole thing. So pretty quickly, I ended up doing pretty much the top shit in Chicago. I still didn't even see house music as like the direction I'm going to go. It was just some more DJs that I was dealing with, and they had no idea about the club stuff I was doing. But Terry Hunter was the one that introduced me to Jazzy Jeff. He introduced me to Deon Cole, Kenny Dope, and that was that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been really cool to learn more about his career and kind of more about his music. Very storied. I think his first release was 90, Madness or something.
Yeah, you gotta think he made a record and he gets a call from somebody in Europe. You know, your song is #1 over here? And he said, what? He goes, I'm gonna send you some magazines. 2 weeks later, magazines came and they had his song as like a #1 song. And then they organized for him to go do a gig, and he went over to London and there was 6,000 people all screaming his name and knowing his song.
Reminds me of Rodriguez, Detroit artist.
I saw that documentary. Yeah.
Searching for Sugar Man.
Yep.
Because he had blown up in Africa and he had no idea. He was working construction.
Yep.
They were bootlegging his tape in Zambia.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to think that that's even a possibility, but that's how it was, back then. And Terry has been basically on a run ever since. He hasn't known anything else. Like, that's been it. Like, he never had to do those shitty grinding gigs like what most DJs have to do. He doesn't understand the idea of a club owner being like, I need you to play these songs. He was able to, from the beginning, be known for doing what he does and being booked for that, where he never had to play the game in a sense, which is something a lot of people, they don't get the luxury of that.
Is it a luxury or is it just being true to yourself? And when you find something that's very honest and very integral to yourself, don't the people come around?
Not always, and there's not always those opportunities. I think for a lot of people that are deciding they want to be a DJ for a living, they can't come out right now and say, I'm only going to play house music and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, what venue are you going to play at? Like, if you actually want to make a career out of DJing, the fact is right now there's 10 places that you could choose from if you want to play open format. That means you don't have to go work at a cubicle. There's not 10 places that you could play house music that are going to pay you that you don't have to work in your cubicle. You have to make it to such a large level playing a niche before you could just be the guy and make enough money doing it. I say the same thing for me. Like, somebody said to me one time, they're like, you get to do all this nightlife shit. Like, that's awesome. And I'm like, do you know how many pizza menus I had to design in order to get here? I couldn't just do nightclub flyers. Like, that wasn't an option. I got to this point now that that's what I do. But like, at one point I had to take whatever design work I could do. But what would I rather do? Be a waiter at a restaurant and only do nightclub flyers? Or would I rather take all this other stuff that needs design and be a designer and then also get to design my stuff? There was a DJ I met with one time who was saying that like, he just refuses to play weddings. He was literally a waiter. But if you took one wedding, you wouldn't have to be a waiter. You do one wedding a month, and you don't have to be a waiter, and then you could go play your obscure music on Thursdays at wherever that's going to book you for it. Like, which would you rather do? There's a point that keeping it real goes wrong. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Isn't that a Dave Chappelle skit?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and there's a lot of those keeping it real Nazis about being true to this shit, and it's just like, what's true to it? Like, you're a waiter. Is that being true to it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I learned that from Abstract, the graffiti artist in Miami. He did an advertisement on the Wynwood walls. It was like a beautiful piece, but it had like Heineken. And I was posting on Twitter about how whack I thought it was. I was like, this is so fucked up for you to bastardize something that's amazing, like graffiti, and to turn it into an advertisement. And he DMs me and he goes, I'm literally just trying to feed my daughter. Like, yeah, this is a paycheck, bro.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, you think you're being a realist about shit, but like, the real shit is we gotta eat. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta eat doing this shit. You know how much work I do that I don't promote? I promote a certain thing because that's what I want people to see, but I still take jobs for other stuff. If the money's good, yeah, all day. I might not promote it with my name on it and put it out there or promote like, look what I did, but like, we gotta eat as artists. That shit never ends. It's not all just fun stuff. Like, can't it all be cool?
So can you talk about going on tour with Jeff and kind of what that's been like and what your relationship has been like? For those who don't know, I'm not sure there's many who don't know, but he's universally regarded as the greatest living hip hop DJ, I would say.
So this is what happened. Terry Hunter, to his credit, was one of the first people that realized, like, you're more than just a designer, aren't you? And the way that came about was we were going to be doing a festival in the Dominican Republic. We started putting it together, and we booked our venues, and we were about to have Jeff and all these people play, and COVID happened. But at the time, we were talking all the time, putting this major production together. And when that all came about, basically all the DJs didn't know what was going to happen. They were just like, fuck, you know what I mean? And since me and Terry were talking every day, I was just like, yo, you know what? Like right now is the time to really go hard with this shit. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was just like, listen, let's start really pushing this Terry Hunter brand. And if we could build your brand right now when nobody else is going to be spending money on marketing and putting stuff out there, by the time this shit lightens up, if it does, like you're going to be in a really good position. And I proposed that to him. And that's when me and Terry struck a deal and became partners on some shit. And I took over the Terry Hunter brand. So we started promoting all of his stuff. We came up with the Sanitize Your Soul show. We started doing our own streaming festivals with his birthday party and other stuff where we went down clubs and booking DJs he had access to give us sets. And, you know, we were doing all that during COVID. Long story short, by the time COVID started letting up, the Terry Hunter name was out there like it was never really out there before, and it was changing. That also was the time that I was like, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start coming with you to your gigs, make sure that we get the right pictures and all this other stuff, and, you know, just stuff we need for content. And that's when the whole recap thing kind of started, where I started just pulling out my phone and making recaps. Again, I'm not a videographer or anything. I just had access to iPhone was good enough, and we started making the recaps. Pretty much from that, I had already been doing some design for Jazzy Jeff, but the designs I did for him were never even really released. They didn't even use any of it yet. But Jazzy Jeff saw what I was doing with Terry and was basically like, whatever you're doing for him, I want you doing for me. It was a couple months before the Grammys, and Terry was nominated for a Grammy with the Beyonce thing.
Break My Soul.
Break My Soul, yeah, for Beyonce. And I was like, cool, I'm willing to work with you under 2 conditions. Number one, I'm not gonna stop working with Terry. And number two, I can't start for like 3 months because we've got the Grammys coming up and I gotta do everything with him. And he was like, all right, cool. So for basically 3 months, I knew that I was about to start working with Jazzy Jeff. But we were on a run going to the Grammys, and, you know, Break My Soul was a very big song, and we were going out there underneath that Beyonce thing, so that was its own thing. And like, there's been different points in time that life has changed where this thing has happened, and when Terry got the nomination for the Break My Soul thing, that's one of the points that life really changed. Like, people really started acting differently, and this whole thing of quote-unquote celebrity shit started happening, and I started noticing it with me. So, like, that was one point that change started happening. The second point was definitely after I started touring with Jazzy Jeff for a little while. The way I describe it is I never got more offers to be picked up at the airport ever in my life. And I didn't realize this until way later. When I started with Jeff, that was the 50th year of hip hop. One of the very first things I did with him was they said, yeah, we're gonna go do this tour. We're doing a couple days with Rakim, Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, and there was somebody else on that bill too. I can't remember. Oh, Big Daddy Kane. So we did a bunch of shows with Live Nation. That was literally the start. I was like, yeah, I gotta go fly to meet with Jazzy Jeff and go do a couple shows for this. And wow. It was off to the races after that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about those two that allows them to be so successful? Like, what is it about them that make them such successful artists for so long? What allowed them to have that longevity?
We had a saying for Terry that I came up with that was like, my only gimmick is that I make really good music. So Terry's just very good at what he does, hands down. And Terry's a great person. So relationship-wise, he's golden. Jeff is the truth. There's no doubt about it. Like, when you get around, like, I remember this, whenever I went out with him on one run, and we had to do like 5 days in a row, all different types of gigs, you know what I mean? One was like a hip hop thing, one was like a private thing. And like, this man played a different style set for 5 different groups of people and crushed it every single time. His ability to adapt and play differently, and I was just like, oh, you're not just like, do your Jazzy Jeff thing, like, you're that good of a DJ, like, you have it 100%. He's the truth. He is the best DJ in the world that I've seen, period. The interesting thing about the whole Jazzy Jeff thing was there's so much about him that I didn't know. Because again, I've been busy doing my own shit that I've never been a fan or a follower type person. That's never been me. I'm just busy doing what I do. So like, when I got with Jeff, there was so much I had to learn. It's really been an eye-opening experience as like, he's the god to like almost all the DJs. Here I am around this person, staying at the crib, and like, it's hard for me to even fathom what that even appears to be like to people, because it's just, I don't know how I ended up there, and here we are.
Yeah, but you know that you have the talent and skill that's carried you to where you are right now, right? It's the same question to you, right? What's allowed you to persevere in this business and allowed you to continue to do it, rather than, you know, you could have gone corporate, you could sell out, you could go get a job at some design firm, and you could do graphic design or PR, some kind of social media marketing work for $80,000-$90,000 a year, probably, if you wanted.
There was a point in time in Miami. So one of the designers I looked up to, his name was Tams, Michael Tams. He was doing all the nightlife stuff in Miami. And when all the housing stuff started blowing up with all the big buildings, he became the guy and he started doing all the corporate type stuff for like all the development shit, making tons of money. And I remember that time because I remember I had one client that was like a real estate guy and I was doing all the brochures for like $25 million homes, easy design, and they paid really well. But I really like doing flyers. I wasn't into the shit. And I made a decision. I was just like, all right, I could do those brochures or I could just do 5, 6 flyers a day. You know what? If this is going to be what I make, I'd rather do the 5 or 6 flyers a day because I like doing them. They make all this money doing this other shit. Like, I don't need much in life. Like, I'm comfortable with that. So I made that choice. And, you know, it wouldn't be the smartest decision if you look at it on paper, but I stuck with it and was sticking with it. It then brought me up and up and up and up to the level that now I'm doing shit for some of the best people in the world and I have the luxury to be able to do that. So like, I actually do love it. That's why nobody could outwork me because I love the work. Like I love doing this shit. And when somebody else is going to go to sleep because they're tired, I'm going to stay up and I'm going to keep knocking it out, which is what got me to the point that here we are. And believe me, it still blows my mind. Like the Jazzy Jeff thing, it blows my mind. Walking out with the Roots and like all that, like I'm like, how the fuck did I get here? I stuck with it. The craziest part about it is like, it's this thing that people don't even realize though, because it's not a position that socially is looked at that anyone pays attention to. But here we are.
Where did Moe Knows come from and when did that become your moniker?
Graffiti wise, I used to write MOE.
Is that your government name, Mo?
No. I like to say, if you know my actual name, we're really friends. So the Mo thing was a graffiti thing.
Where did that come from?
Graffiti shit. Keep that private for right now. But like, so the Mo thing was a graffiti thing. And then when I was b-boying, we always used to go under your hip hop name. So that's how that stuck. So I always kind of promoted myself under that. The Moe Knows Best thing was when I had the printing company, which was Hot Cards, and I left them, I started another one called The Second Step. And when I was leaving and going to Florida, I need to have a name, something else that I could start promoting under. I was like, all right, I'm going to start a Gmail account. And nobody knows this. There was a company in the Strip District called Mind Over Media. And their logo was an M, a line, and an M. And their website domain was Mom Knows Best. Mind Over Media Knows Best. I always thought that was so creative. And I needed to get an email account real quick in Miami so I could put it on business cards to go walking up to the DJs. I was like, it, moeknowsbest@gmail.com. It was available and I just did it. So then that's where it went from.
Dope.
I never wanted to be the name. Like, I really didn't. I never thought of it as something longevity. If I could go back and change it, I probably would have done something different. But in a way, it was like a manifestation. You know what I mean? Like, when you start realizing at one point, like, wait, hold on, did I actually make this become true? Because it's like a joke thing at first. Yeah, you are subconsciously telling people you're the best, but like, I didn't think I was the best. But then at one point, like, when I looked at who's doing what, like, am I actually the best at this? Shit.
Write it down on paper and watch your ideas take flight.
To this day, I write this shit on paper. Like, I do that all the time. There's always something hanging up on my refrigerator, whether it's a number or a plan or something that I write. And like, when I tell you it's like been 4 or 5 times easy that I've actually been able to make that come to fruition, it bugs you out. You have to write shit down sometimes.
It's the law of manifestation. If you want it bad enough.
Yeah. If you want it bad enough, and then like, you know, I'm a big believer in like words or magic. You're casting spells. You say it and it could happen. So like, when people are around me and they're talking negative, I'm real quick to be like, yo, stop that right now. Like, you're defeating yourself. You have to speak positively about anything. And people might say this egotistical or whatever, but there's nothing I don't think I can do. Like, I truly believe that. I believe it so much that there's stuff I don't do because I already know I can do it. That's the real crazy thing.
Yeah, well, we're more powerful than we know.
Yeah, 100%. That Steve Jobs shit of like, look around, every single thing that you see was somebody thought of that and they brought that to fruition. And that person is no smarter than you. I always thought that my best trait was that I'm just willing to pick up the phone and go, could we do this? When most people won't.
There's a vision element, right? That's what I see as Moe Knows. You know, Moe Knows Best. There's someone out there who can help you clarify your vision. Somebody who actually has worked in nightlife and understands it. And if you have a problem, Moe knows.
Yeah, maybe. Like I said, I think I'm the person that's just like, what's the idea? Okay, how are we going to get from point A to point B? And usually getting from point A to point B is not that difficult, but for whatever reason, people are scared to take that step. Like, there's a thing now where like, because of the way things have gone, I get a lot of DMs from people about work. Most of the time, it's complete bullshit. But a lot of times, it's just some up and coming DJ who doesn't really play out, that got the balls to send me a DM, and they all kind of read the same. Like, I don't think you're ever going to respond to me, and I will literally be like, send me your phone number, and then I go, what's your budget? All right, cool, send that. And a lot of times, I end up doing their job out of love and respect, because why not? Because in a lot of ways, I feel like, man, if you even built up enough confidence to be like, I'm just going to shoot the shot, like, good for you. That is step one in getting anything done. So let's go.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's right. You have to believe it, dream it, write it down, and then start walking.
Step. Yeah, start walking. One step at a time.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
Path is created by two people walking on it or something like that. So we talked about Chicago and the house connection, Jeff. We talked about Terry. What about... What's next?
So the way I ended up here was right at the beginning of COVID. I got a call from a nursing home, like, your mom is in a nursing home. And then I flew here the next day, and they were like, she's got 4 to 6 months to live. So I was in Chicago at the time, and I started looking up spots. I got a place for us to get a 2-bedroom apartment to honor her wishes of what she wanted. What happened, and I kept the apartment. This was always a place that I could come back to just to kind of like relax and get away from what my life is normally like. You know, I'm on planes all the time and going different places, so I don't... Like, I remember back in the day being in Pittsburgh, this is a place where you're just like, if you want to be into some shit, this is not the place to be. You know what I mean? Like, let's just face it. This ain't it. But, like, I left and did that life 100%. I lived it. I'm still living it. We're now like, I don't need that to be my constant. So having an option of a place to come to that's, like, relaxed is nice. So that's what this place is for me.
Very cool. I guess Jeff is in Philly and Terry's in Chicago?
Yep. I spend so much time in Chicago, it's ridiculous. I mean, I lived in Chicago. I mean, that's like second home at this point with as much as I'm there.
So what comes next? What do you have in the works? I know you did that video.
Yeah, we did post that shit with Dion Cole. I just finished all the background visuals for Jeff for the New Kids on the Block tour. I entered a contract with Slick Rick, which will be interesting. The other person who I was in talks with before and just started negotiations with again is... Wow. Yeah, so, you know, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. Like, the fact is that there's a lot of people who are very good at what they do who struggle when it comes to the online stuff and the marketing stuff and really getting it out there. And that's one of the avenues that I am a valuable asset to the team. So I think so far the resume is not that bad.
What do you call what you do?
I call myself a brand strategist. Yeah, I basically help people strategize their brand, but I also execute as well. So that's the difference. Like, I'm not just the consultant that's going to come in and be like, here's what you need to do. Good luck. I'm the person that's like, all right, cool. And I'm going to have it done for you tomorrow. Let's go. So it's all in one thing. So yeah, but I don't even know if that's the right title. I don't know what the title is. Like, I can't point to anybody and say, I do what they do.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels more all-encompassing than anything else that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, normally it's like 5 people that are doing what I could do for somebody myself, you know, which is crazy.
But then isn't that what happened at Twitter? They fired 80% of the employees and it actually got better.
Yeah, most of the time there's a lot of fluff. Companies start figuring out how to do more with less. And that's where I think my position has been something, because as the music industry changes, especially, these record companies aren't doing it for people anymore. And now they're like, okay, how can I do this? And to reach out to 5 different companies to get all this different shit done is difficult. And then when you're like, wait, there's one person that could do all of this for me? The game changer was really 6 months of being with Jazzy Jeff during the 50-year hip hop. That's one of those write your own ticket type positions. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Anybody else you wanted to shout, or anything else you wanted to talk about?
I appreciate people that are still holding it down for the city and doing what they do and making stuff happen. Shout out to you for doing this podcast and shining light to people that are, you know, making moves in the city. I think all that is really dope. Somebody I actually consider a friend is Nugget. I think what he's done for the city has been absolutely beautiful. Shout out to Big Phil for being out there, putting on shows and getting that shit going. So I appreciate anybody that's just doing the work. I appreciate people that do their shit.
It's been a lot of fun doing it, for sure. And conversations like these make it what it is, make it worth having. And the conversations we've had off TV too. Well, I'm ready for the Moe Knows movie that...
Man, the amount of people that come at me like, man, you got to do a book or you got to do this or that. The thing is, you know, I feel like I have a responsibility to some degree because I never knew that what I did was possible. And I think that there's a lot of positions in music, entertainment, and nightlife that people could potentially do that doesn't mean you're the person in the spotlight, and avenues and possibilities to be involved to make shit happen. At some point, people like me have to start speaking out to let people know that that's an option. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for what you do. Thanks for coming on.
You, bro. Appreciate
it. Let's get a picture.
Than a Martian, more lit than arson. Listen to Dolly Parton.